Bryce Young, the #1 overall pick of the 2023 NFL Draft, 2 games into his second season, has already been benched in place of the Red Rocket, Andy Dalton, which already has me asking the question, is Bryce Young on pace to be the biggest draft bust of all time? In year 1, outside of maybe 1 or 2 games, Bryce looked pretty bad, but so did the team as a whole. So he got a pass. In the offseason, they improved the offensive line, they got him a few new guys to throw to, and hired Dave Canales as their head coach. The same dude credited with reviving the careers of both Baker Mayfield and Geno Smith. With these changes, the Panthers weren't expected to be great by any means, but it was at least expected that Bryce would show some improvement. And so far, it looks like he just regressed. Even with a better O-line, Bryce has continued just looking straight up scared in the pocket. He's missed on throws you just gotta make if you're an NFL quarterback, and overall has looked like he doesn't even belong in the NFL. Starting the year off completing less than 60% of his throws, throwing 3 picks to 0 touchdowns with a fumble, while the Panthers offense is currently averaging less than 7 points per game. What are we, in the 1920s? Getting blown out in both outings. Obviously the Panthers as a whole suck, but so has Bryce. I know it's early, but with this benching, how does he compare at this moment to the 2 biggest busts of all time? After a pretty solid season at LSU, where the 6'6" Russell showed tremendous arm strength, apparently able to throw the ball 70 yards down the field from his knees, the Raiders selected him with the 1st overall pick in the 2007 draft. But little did they know, he was codeine crazy. He enjoyed sipping lean, apparently starting at a young age. In year 1, after missing training camp due to a contract dispute, he wouldn't start till week 17, in a game where he actually looked pretty solid. In year 2, he was named the day 1 starter, starting in all but 1 game. He wasn't very good or efficient, but neither were the Raiders. He did have a solid 3-game stretch to end the season though, throwing 6 touchdowns to just 2 picks, going 1-2 in those games, actually leading a competent looking offense, giving Raiders fans hope going into year 3. But during that offseason, both his uncles Ray and Mike tragically passed away due to heart-related ailments. And with Ray being one of the biggest people in his life, basically his second dad, this crushed him and led him down the road of self-medication, doubling down on the double cup. His work ethic wasn't even good to begin with, but got even worse with him abusing liquid opiates. This became quite apparent to Raiders coaches, even going as far as once giving him a blank tape to watch as a test, which ended with him coming back the next day telling them he watched the blitz packages. During the 2009 season, he was atrocious, completing less than 50% of his passes and throwing 3 touchdowns to 11 picks in 9 games, eventually getting benched after a loss to KC. He would get subbed in during a few games following the benching, but wasn't any better. During the 2010 offseason, Russell showed up to minicamp looking anything but mini. In fact, it appeared that he had developed a lean gut, reportedly weighing in at 300 pounds. Dude could have played O-line. The Raiders subsequently traded for another quarterback, and in May of that same offseason, Russell was cut by the Raiders and was never signed to another team again. Bryce and Jamarcus on paper are completely different quarterbacks, but their stats at this point are pretty comparable. And when your play is being compared to someone who not only didn't care much about football, but also did his fair share of liquid codeine, you're not doing too swell. The second quarterback we're going to look at is Ryan Leaf, who had a very similar profile coming into the draft as Russell, coming in at 6'5", weighing 270, being the 1B to Peyton Manning's 1A in the 1997 draft. With some even considering Leaf to be the better prospect, having a better arm and a higher ceiling. But ultimately the Colts made the right decision picking Peyton at 1, leaving the Chargers to pick Leaf. And right away, he was completely terrible. Starting in the first 9 games of the 1994 season, throwing 2 touchdowns to 15 interceptions, completing only 45% of his passes. The team somehow won 3 games in his starts, but that was all thanks to the defense. But not only was he bad on the field, Off the field, he was even worse. He alienated teammates, blaming them for his horrendous play. Played golf instead of studying film and was considered uncoachable. In year 2, 20 minutes into his first training camp workout, he hurt his shoulder and missed the entire year. That somehow didn't stop him from fighting with fans and coaches. And in year 3, after barely winning the starting job following the final preseason game, he once again was god-awful in his first 2 starts, throwing 1 touchdown to 5 picks, with one of them even costing the Chargers the game. In their 3rd game, he played through an apparent shoulder injury, then injured his wrist the next week against the Seahawks. He missed 5 games, then returned in November, and it was speculated that he completely faked the wrist injury so he could play more golf. After coming back, he started the remainder of the games, having 1 singular game where he was actually pretty good, throwing for over 300 yards and 3 touchdowns against their division rival Broncos. They lost, but it was something. The Chargers finished the year 1-15. Leaf played slightly better than his rookie year, but was still by far the worst starting quarterback in the NFL. And the Chargers decided to cut him that offseason. He bounced around to a couple more teams, then 2 years later, never played again. Following his career, he dealt with some drug problems, he went to prison, but today he seems like a changed man. Compared to Ryan Leaf, statistically, Bryce looks like a Pro Bowler. Ryan Leaf might actually be the worst quarterback of all time. The problem with Bryce, I think, is the scouts completely whiffed. He should have never gone number 1, or even gone in the first round. Unlike Leaf and Russell, Bryce doesn't have a rocket arm or crazy athleticism. Even looking at his Bama highlights, none of this stuff works in the NFL. I honestly believe coming out of college, he should have been looked at as a prospect closer to Stetson Bennett than Kyler Murray. Because unlike Murray, who's also small in stature, he can't rifle throws downfield, and he can't run around defenders like a Scooby-Doo character. Looking at his draft profile, most of his strengths coming in look like weaknesses now. Being behind a Bama O-line in college, then getting stuck behind a Panthers O-line for a year has seemed to have broken his calm demeanor, and his struggle to make reads quickly should have been a bigger concern. Obviously, their well-respected owner David Tepper's decision to trade away a treasure trove of assets, which included at the time their top wideout DJ Moore, didn't help. But honestly, just watching him, I don't think he has what it takes to be an NFL level starting quarterback. There's no shame in that, most people don't. Which is too bad because unlike Leaf and Russell, he actually seems like a cool dude, with his coaches and teammates even defending him. But just based on what Carolina gave up for him, and the fact that it appears that they quit on him already, I hope I'm wrong, but at this moment in time, it's looking like Bryce Young might just go down as one of the biggest draft busts of all time. And that concludes the video. If you made it this far, please consider leaving a like and subscribing. It helps out more than you know. If you're still here, comment lean to let me know you made it to the end of the video. Anyhow, thank you all so much for watching. I love and appreciate every single one of you guys. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day, and good night.